All right, hello. My name is Darcy, and I have this new account, which is aptly named Darcy YouTube. The idea here is going to be that I am a USCF expert, and I'm going to be playing classical games on lichess.org. This is, as I said, a new account. I made this today, and I do have two games on it already that I played while testing out, commentating while I actually play, and testing out the video screen recording software. And so I think I have everything in working order. After every game, I'm going to be doing a brief analysis of the game, and then I'm going to save it in a study. So if you'd like to see the other games I've played already, um, after I play this next game and put it in the study, you'll be able to see where you can view all of that. So for now, we're just going to jump into this quick pairing of 15 plus 15. Quite a long game for online, but that's the idea here. I just want to have some fun, play some very simple chess, and see how far we can get on some simple thinking. So you can see after winning two games, we have a nice almost 2,000 rated provisional account. And what could be simpler than d4, d5, c4, and I think the Queen's Gambit Declined is pretty simple. Knight here. So it's quite likely that if we play knight f6, we'll see the exchange variation, but that's not a huge deal. Well, if that happens, then it will happen. It's quite common though for people around this level and above to be playing in that way. So I think sensible enough is just to break the pin. Don't really have a reason to bring my bishop out further. It's kind of like mixing some other opening ideas by doing that. I can castle right away. I don't see a problem with that. H6 is fine too. At this point, I'm not sure I want to play it, but absolutely nothing wrong with it. But I think if we're just playing simply, castling has to be the way to go. So likely we'll see white just play simply as well with e3. Maybe develop the bishop, maybe put the rook on the open file first, and also castle. So we can start to think about our own pieces as well. Maybe we play knight here, then h6 and b6, which is, I believe it's the Tartakower. I'm not a great expert in these opening lines, but we'll get some sort of pawn structure that we can play around with. All right, knight b to d7. Not to c6, because I think we want to leave that pawn unobstructed for the future. This knight will help support a future c5. Maybe I play c6, although I kind of don't want to play in these pawn grabbing dynamic fashions, although this wouldn't be those kinds of positions already. If I wanted to do that, I would have had to do it earlier. One thing to note here is that people often delay this move as long as possible because now maybe black is enticed to take here rather than before, because white will have to move the bishop again. They don't get the benefit of taking back in a single swoop. So at the same time, I can start by playing h6. I think it would benefit me if we were to see this bishop for knight trade, giving up the two bishops being considered a middle game endgame advantage and by most players in open-ish positions. This is still has great possibility of becoming an open position, so for sure I would be happy to see this kind of trade, and I would have no hesitation to kind of pre-move that capture. Bishop drops back, which is fine. And now my options. I think one option is to take and play c5, kind of break the center up a little. And I don't know if white has a way to really exploit um, in the center with his king still here. So this seems like a good opportunity to maybe equalize the center a bit. So I'll play c5. Now maybe my queen can start to come out to some of these squares. I can start to develop my bishop to b7. I think things are looking all right. So his knight seems to be coming in to one of these squares. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. I might even have to give up my bishop. I'll be honest, I didn't really consider this strongly enough. But I don't think it really matters. So even if he grabs my bishop pair, he spent a fair bit of time accomplishing that. And if I play a6, then his knight isn't trapping my rook. So I'll just play a6. If his knight comes to d6, we'll just deal with that. Maybe I'll play b5 and then bring my queen out, and then all my pieces might become very harmonious. So I think dynamically I won't really be at a disadvantage. Now his knight is kind of in what I would call no man's land. So now I definitely want to play b5 and then trade the rook for the two pieces. That's going to be a huge gain for me because it's a rook that wasn't doing very much for two minor pieces that were doing quite a lot. I think I would suddenly have a very solid advantage if I could pull that off. So a bit curious that he would choose knight c7 so quickly without actually considering if I just what is the only move I really have to avoid it. So not sure what he'll do here. Of course we could see d takes c5, and in that event I think I would just take back with the knight, and his knight just doesn't have a way out. One thing that might be possible is some sacrifice on e6, and I'll be honest, I didn't really give this due consideration. And I'm not sure what I'll do if he plays it. So if we do a little calculation here, bishop takes e6, f takes e6, knight takes, aha, okay, I have check. So it's not really a possibility. So that's a bit lucky. I didn't actually consider that at all when I went for this plan. Although I may have just had to adopt this plan regardless. I don't know what I could have done. Otherwise that would have really, saved the rook. I mean, I'm not sure I was losing the rook, even if the rook came to b8. We might see some sort of knight sacrifice, and then if I can draw the arrows appropriately, bishop takes and then knight takes, and it's still the rook for two minor pieces, but he'd get a bit more out of the bargain there, which would not be ideal. So now this is quite typical. When someone plays something a little too hastily, all of a sudden they start taking time to try to dig themselves out of the hole. But really, you should be taking the time before you make the move so that you don't put yourself in the hole in the first place. So curious to see what he'll come up with. And I'm curious too if I can win the knight outright. Like if I were to be given a free hand here to play what I want, is it really b5 that I want, or is it maybe knight to h5, get rid of the bishop and just win the knight? That seems pretty appealing. Of course, then you have to consider, what if I trap my own knight? If we were to imagine knight h5, bishop e5, takes, I might win this knight, but then he might have g4. Well, this is interesting. So preventing b5 because of the pin. However, I do have knight to b6. I'll take the bishop and then I'll play b5. And additionally, I have knight here. Now, I think I don't have time for this anymore because now he might actually want to play knight to b4. So not just stopping b5, but bringing the knight to b5 to escape. So it looks like it's in my best interest to force the queen away from this file. So this is starting to look pretty dire for him. I imagine we'll see one of these two moves, and then I should take, of course. Queen takes, and then we come back to the original question: b5 or knight to h5. Knight h5, we might see bishop e5 now. I don't really have f6 without allowing knight takes e6, now that his queen is also ganging up on the pawn. I don't have the same knight takes, my knight isn't here anymore. So I don't think it's in my best interest to bring my knight to the sidelines like this. So we'll go here. We'll pre-move just in case he takes and wants the two pawns for the piece, but very doubtful that that will happen. I suspect that we'll just see queen move and then I'll pick up the two pieces from my rook, and we'll take it from there. I'm feeling pretty good about the position at this point. Don't really expect that it'll be very difficult to develop the rest of my pieces and get some sort of advantage going. Especially if maybe we can make some sort of majority on the queen side, or isolate a pawn of his or something. So if I were to guess what move he would play, I think I would guess queen c2 to keep an eye on this pawn. After I take a couple times, I won't, like my pawn will be pinned down the file to my queen, which would be sitting here undefended. So I think queen c2 is pretty logical. But maybe it's not, because in a few moves I might end up having my bishop come to e4. Hard to say. It's clearly a decision he should take some time about. Maybe queen e2. Not really sure. At this point I'm just rambling. I've never been very good at the guessing game when it's a position like this. So I guess even if I were to put myself in his shoes, I'd feel pretty indecisive here. I think I would consider queen e2 to not have to worry about potential trading on f3 with my bishop. Not that I would really be looking to do that, but it might keep everything a bit more solid. Less likely for the queen to get attacked in the next few moves and have to move again. Alright, so we do see queen c2. I should definitely follow through and take. Of course, he'll recapture, and then we'll see what happens. So he might be able to play rook c1, in which case I would play, actually I'd probably play check or c4. So I think he should just castle. Castle while it's still convenient. I should play bishop b7, I think. I could have played c4, which is very true. I felt a little disjointed though. Maybe he attacks it and I have to make some concession somewhere. Because again, I am still pinned down the file. So at this point though, now I feel pretty comfortable playing c4. And even if he attacks it, I think I can sit with my bishop on d5. Okay, so he brings his knight in. Maybe he was concerned about bishop takes f3, although I don't really imagine myself doing that. I can bring my rook to the c file. I can play c4. At this point, he can't play this anymore because his knight would hang. So I think it makes sense for me to involve my rook. And then start thinking about what pieces aren't being very useful. I think my knight could stand to be improved. Maybe we'll see it come over to the queen side. Maybe we'll see it support my bishop. Not really sure at this point. I think I'm slightly better. I don't think I'm winning by any means. It's hard to see where this game is going at this point. And I don't really enjoy doing the guessing game of what the objective computer evaluation is in positions. So I'll just say black is slightly better. So I imagine we'll see his rooks come to the center. Not really sure what else he would really attempt here. It's possible that he could try to play like this, but that seems very risky. You're just weakening your central pawns, or the central pawn. So he moves his queen after all, which gives me the option of taking on d4, giving him an isolated pawn, which is a little tempting. I also have the option of harassing his knight, and his knight would have to come back somewhere such that he wouldn't just be losing a pawn. So I like that idea. I'm going to go here. Again, he can't take, he loses knight. So, and I'm doing it with bishop first, even if I might take the next move, because if I take first and then play bishop d6, his queen defends the knight. He's not compelled to go backwards. So I think this is more efficient. Just go bishop d6 first, force him backwards, and then maybe give him the pawn, the isolated pawn. And then maybe I can infiltrate on the second rank here. Lots of options. So you can see a stark difference in activity here. Not only do I have more, objectively, I have more pieces, even though material count isn't so different. But coupled with the fact that my pieces are increasingly more active than his rooks, neither of which has been put to good use yet. This is where I start being able to make multiple threats in a row here. It's just hard for him to counteract all the pressure, and then that's how you can like logically carry that out to realize like, oh, he might lose a pawn somewhere, and why was it that he didn't have the defensive resources to deal with it? Well, it's because he somehow fell behind in time. Notice that he made a couple queen moves here. Maybe he was better off bringing his queen to e2 in the first place, like I suggested when it was his decision to where to put the queen. All those things add up. So now he's dropping this pawn, and maybe he's trying to counterattack this pawn. So I'm just going to take first, and carry on from there. He can go here. But I'm not sure he should. Things start to get a bit dicey. Maybe it's okay. So rook c1. I think mainly I don't have to take this pawn. Maybe it's better if I take this pawn. So I just go queen to b6. My bishop guards the rook. If he takes it, he takes it. So be it. And suddenly I'm winning a pawn. So I'll have the two pieces for the rook and a pawn, which now we're starting to get into the territory of decisive advantage. Now even if he has active pieces, I'll just have more general activity from having material advantage. And I mean, it's just so much easier for me as long as I mitigate his threats. He should take. There's no reason not to, because it deactivates one of my pieces. Okay, so now I have a strong passed pawn. Of course, he's threatening to fork me, so I should take care of that. And I think this just makes the most sense. He might play f4. I can always defend that pawn. I can play knight d7 or something of the like. But if he does that, suddenly it might become very hard to defend on e4. And in fact, my next move is probably going to be, well, maybe I don't want to go bishop to b7. Maybe my bishop belongs on this diagonal now. Looking at these pawns, maybe coming to c4. Because I can easily see my bishop becoming waylaid after a move like f3. So I think this is turning out pretty well. So if f4, what would I do? Well, I can't take. We would see e5, and I'd be face palming. So I mentioned already knight d7. The alternative to defend the pawn would be to play like queen b8, not to c7, and just encourage him to overload me. But even then, I'd rather recapture with the knight. I like my bishops. Having both of the bishops still is quite nice. So I would probably go knight to d7. And then I'd have to be self-conscious about weaknesses on f7. Alright, so he's attacking my bishop. This is now undefended. So am I now attacking two things? He can still play f4. Or can he? If he plays f4, all of a sudden, if his knight were to move, I would have these tactics if it came with check. So unclear. So I can take this pawn now, and he can capture my pawn. But I think this benefits me to make these trades. It reduces the chance of him attacking me in the center, and I'll just start being able to push this pass pawn by getting rid of the blockader. So I'm liking how things are developing here. I also have the option of taking. That's a quite serious option. I have the time to consider it, so I should, because I can just win an extra pawn. If you were to capture, I would just win an extra pawn, no sweat. And he would have to play a move that, so like if I were to go here, and he were to take here, I could very seriously have knight h3. Because if take or something, I push, it's check, and I'm attacking his queen again, that same motif. Queen goes to block, and then I pin the queen. And if takes, let's say takes, check, king to the corner, I might have this again. Because I could have some sort of checkmate threats here. So one final calculation. That's the critical line. Takes. I don't see any other annoying knight move possibility. I'm just going to go for it. This looks pretty appealing. He doesn't have any checks or anything. I checked. I checked for that. If queen takes, I just take back, and my bishop defends f7. Looks pretty solid. Right, so something like this, and is admitting that I've won the pawn. And I might be able to play here first, just to force him to take back like this. I think that's definitely benefiting me. So, yeah, this is absolutely crushing now. Also, he needs to play a move that deals with this threat. I mean, any logical move would deal with the threat. So something like that. I don't think there's any point in me complicating matters, but it is possible to give up f7. But at this point, there's no need to calculate. It's going to be very easy to push this pawn. Yeah, and he resigns. Completely understandable. All right, so now we're going to bring this, I think can just put it in my study like this. And here we are. So that was this game. So while I talk about it, I think I should also just throw on request to computer analysis. And let's see what happened here. D4, D5. So everything is pretty normal. Yeah, H6 I could play. I just didn't really want to play it. I mean, play with nearly the same frequency. Yeah, of course, H6 is still a possibility. Yeah, and of course, D takes C4 is the normal move here. And it's funny, of all the moments when I could play H6, I played it when it was not the most popular move. But it should transpose, and C5. Yeah, so I like my position here. I think this turned out well for black. And of course, knight b5 is a mistake, but a6 surprisingly is a mistake. I wasn't expecting this. Okay, so it would have benefited me to play queen a5 instead. That's interesting. Because a move like queen a5, I didn't think really solved my problems. Okay, so like maybe I trade queens. But, oh sorry, it's black's move. But I still have to solve this riddle. Maybe I play a6 there. I'm not really going to turn on the computer, but something to learn from here is that a6 was a mistake because of bishop c7. Now, I didn't consider that move, and it's a good move because this bishop, if I lost this bishop, it's not a great bishop. It's going to take me a while to make it useful, and if he spent a bunch of moves to capture it, that would help me. But this bishop is a very important piece. Not only am I losing that piece, I guess I get my rook trapped as well. So this would not be ideal. This would be probably technically losing, although I would have struggled. So a6 is a blunder. I'll have to remember that for the future. But the way this turned out, I think from here on out, things were pretty simple. Knight b6, good move, takes, b5. Interesting. So I guess the computer is showing quite simply that this knight's not going anywhere, and it might be in my best interest to play c4 right away and not give black the opportunity to take on c5, which I wasn't so worried about during the game, but I could definitely see that my advantage might be diminished if he can just liquidate some things and bring his rooks on the open files. So it may have been in my best interest here to play c4 right away and then deal with this. As it is, not a bad position. I think that we can all be satisfied with -4. Yeah, and again, bishop e7, it's not a bad move. It's just that I think c4 was to be preferred because white should be playing d takes c5 here. And, trading queens and having an equalish, or a better chance at an equal position. Still not equal, but, better chance. So knight e5. Rook c8. Yeah, I liked bishop d6 before taking on d4. cd4, rook a c1, queen b6. So I've now won another pawn, e5, queen c2, bishop e6. Yeah, b3, not good enough, knight takes c4. So it looks like I had some pretty good tactical vision here. Played very accurately at the end. And yeah, this is This is too much. It's too hard to stop this pawn. I can start by breaking this pin and making threats against. I mean, not even the pawn. Like, look at the king. In 2 moves, I'm going to be just completely needling this king with my bishops. So that's game over. I think even if the king was safe, this would be game over though, because I'd be able to push this pawn. Eventually, he'd have to trade at best the rook for a bishop and a pawn, and then the queen and bishop versus the queen is not really a competition. So I learned something from this game. Hopefully my commentary was instructive to you too, and I'll see you in the next game.